Hello, everyone. A very good Saturday morning to you. Thank you for joining me on this live broadcast. So, I've been getting a lot of questions from friends who wanted some explanations about what happened yesterday in Parliament. So, this broadcast is for the purposes of education. We are all learning, and in order that everybody understands not just what happened in Parliament yesterday, but to put things in proper perspective. Because we keep getting a lot of, I keep getting a lot of questions, and just this morning, I've seen a press release from the majority in Parliament. What I'm seeking to do, for emphasis, is for education. It's not a response to them because I don't have the capacity to respond to them. So I am, simply explaining what the procedure was and why I think the majority have got it completely wrong. So they've issued a press release where where they say that the majority caucus of the 8th Parliament of Ghana hereby notifies the Ghanaian public to kindly disregard the decision by Speaker Alban Bagbin that 137 members of Parliament have the power to take a decision of Parliament and have consequently rejected the 2022 budget statement and economic policy of the government of Ghana. According to the majority, I'm just going to explain, why they are wrong for the purposes of education. They go further to state that Article 104 of the 1992 Constitution and Order 109 of the Standing Orders of Parliament. The Standing Order of Parliament is the rule book of Parliament. And they say that the two provisions read together requires that at least 138 MPs are needed to have been present in the chamber at the time of the purport, according to them, at the time of the purported vote. They got it completely wrong. What happened yesterday was a resolution. In a resolution, motions that are before Parliament, you do not require all members of Parliament present and voting. You don't. So they are wrong. When they say 138 members were required to have undertaken that vote, I don't know who is advising them. They've got some brilliant lawyers amongst them, but they are completely wrong and they are misleading their followers, because a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members of Parliament. And this is according to Article 102, of the 1992 Constitution. And all NDC members were present. There are 137 members of Parliament. Now, 1/3 of 275 members of Parliament would give you something like 90, 91, 92, 91, or even give or take, say 92. So you had 1/3 of members of Parliament who were present to take a decision. Now, the article of the Constitution they are invoking is used sparingly. That article of the Constitution is used in moments when you want to change, for instance, the Constitution. That is when you need 2/3 of members of Parliament, and 2/3 would have given you 138. Another occasion where 2/3 of members of Parliament may be required would be when Parliament is reversing its own decision. So, for instance, yesterday, the budget for 2022 was rejected. If there's going to be any decision to reverse that, it would require 2/3 of members of Parliament. And I see MPP people, jumping and falling over themselves that Speaker Bagbin is traveling. And so the Honorable Joe Wise is going to be in the chair and they would have their way. What they are doing is simply misleading their supporters. They have disappointed their side and they've disappointed, their government. And so they are giving people a sense of false hope. Now let's look at the numbers in Parliament. Even if Joe Wise, who is the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, presides, it reduces their number to 137 because the person presiding, per the standing orders of Parliament, per the Constitution, does not have a vote. So, because there's an independent member of Parliament, who is the second Deputy Speaker, who has decided to sit with them, even if Joe Wise presides as Speaker is traveling, it leaves them with 137 members of Parliament. We all know that some of their MPs are out of the country, but granted that even all their MPs are in the country, the provision of the Constitution, they need to overturn what happened last night is something they wouldn't have the numbers to do. To overturn that, you need 138. 138 gives you 2/3. They do not have 138 members of Parliament. Don't forget, Speaker Bagbin is traveling out of the country. Joe Wise sits. It brings their number to 137. In all probability, even all of their members of Parliament are in. They don't have it. So this is, for the purposes of education, because I see their members falling over themselves and shouting and saying they will show us where the power lies on Tuesday when Parliament sits on Tuesday. I mean, they don't have any power to show on Tuesday because they are invoking Article 104. Now, 104 reads, except as otherwise provided in the Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. Okay? That is what they are invoking. But as I said earlier, what happened yesterday is, it was a motion. With a motion, before Parliament, you don't need 104 of the Constitution. You have, so long as you have a quorum, and a quorum gives you 92 members, you can equally, take decisions. I mean, we've had in the 7th Parliament instances where there are even 35 members of Parliament in the chamber who have taken decisions on behalf of all the members of Parliament. So they are clearly misleading their supporters, and that needs to be explained, especially to the general public who do not understand some of the happenings in Parliament, especially with regards to what happened yesterday. If they are a serious majority, what the leadership ought to do is to resign for letting their side down, for not standing with the Ghanaian public who are upset about the level of taxation, who are upset about even government's own inability, to manage some of the taxes that they are collecting. So, as I said from the beginning, this is for the purposes of education. Disregard. I'm an ordinary citizen, but with my understanding of happenings in Parliament and with some of the questions that I've gotten, since last night and this morning, I thought I would use this opportunity to clarify and to tell you that they are only giving their supporters false hopes. They cannot overturn what had happened yesterday, because to overturn what had happened yesterday, they would need 2/3. They don't have 2/3. It means, and when I say they don't have 2/3, Joe Wise is going to be presiding from Tuesday, so the person presiding does not have a vote, so long as he's in the chair presiding. If they are minded, what they ought to be doing as a serious party in parliament and government, and the government, their colleagues who are outside of parliament should be advising the majority. What they ought to be doing should be incorporating the concessions, the concerns that have been raised in respect of, making provision to cater for disaster victims, to take away the digital tax or whatever they call it, and to incorporate the concerns of the minority. That is how you reach consensus. Now, they've had my good friend Anodompre, the chief whip of the majority, shouting the other day that they will get all their members in the House and make sure that their will would be done. Well, for Anodompre's information, they don't have all their members currently even in the country. They know it, and they are misleading their supporters. Because some of them are ministers, at any given time, you wouldn't have all government benches in parliament, even if they were to whip all of them to be because of some other government engagement. So as Speaker Bagbin had been advising them, which they haven't been heeding, if you have a parliament that is, very close, 137, plus an independent member sitting with you, all you need to be doing would be, or should be, building bridges, concessions, engaging. That way, you meet each other halfway, But to say that you would whip all your members in the chamber, to take decisions, is something that does not help even to advance the cause of the government. And so they need to eat a humble pie. They need to stop deceiving their supporters, who are jumping over themselves on social media that on Tuesday, the NDC in Parliament would see Pepe. Nothing is going to happen on Tuesday because the Constitution is clear as to what you need to pass a resolution of Parliament. And to pass a resolution of Parliament, you do not need to invoke 104 of the Constitution. All you need is Article 102, which is, 1/3 of the members, present in Parliament. So that's about it. And they have this, the leadership of the majority, they have disappointed their side. They should be apologizing to their supporters and to the president, instead of giving them a false hope and trying to show some bravado at a time when they should be humbling themselves, And as I said, once again, it is for the purposes of education. If you've seen the press release the majority had issued and are worried, disregarded because it has no locus. The fact that Bagbin is traveling does not mean they can overturn what had happened in Parliament. To overturn what had happened using numbers, they would need 2/3. 2/3 is 138. Now, one of them would have to preside, which is the first deputy speaker or the second deputy speaker. If one of them presides, it brings their number, assuming that Ajosafo and everybody is even back in the country, it brings their number to 137, and they don't have 137 to overturn what had happened last night. So I thank you for watching. I wish you a jolly good weekend. This is good for our country. This is indicative of the fact that government has to be listening to the fed up man and woman in the street who are concerned, about the way government is burdening the ordinary Ghanaian with taxes. What they are attempting to do is to tax their way out of economic mismanagement. And clearly, there's no one in the world who's ever taxed their way out of, if you're in a hole, they've run the country to the ground. And in their lazy way of economics, they think they can tax their way out of running the economy to the ground. It doesn't work like that. And they have disappointed their supporters. What they should have done would have been to listen to the concerns of the Ghanaian public, through the minority members in parliament, which they refused to do. So they are paying a huge price, and we are happy with this development. It means Ghana is growing. It means our democracy is advancing. We are moving away from the culture of, one side of the house, the majority side of the house, bulldozing and pushing everything through parliament. If they were minded, their own constituents, the majority members, their own constituents are equally suffering. Even their own party members are suffering, And to think that you would not be humble enough to listen to some of the suggestions of the minority and the Ghanaian public and incorporate them in your budget, and that you would railroad your way through, is most unfortunate. So if you asked me, Chairman Sabonsu, Afenya Makin, Anodam and the rest of the majority leadership should be resigning, for their failure to lead at a time when the majority in parliament needed leadership. And I commend our MPs, the minority MPs in parliament, for a sterling performance, and for standing up to the ordinary Ghanaian. That's the way it's supposed to be. And may God continue to bless this great country called Ghana. Thank you very much for watching, and have a jolly good weekend.